TIL the Parthenon in Athens was largely intact for over 2,000 years. The heavily damaged ruins we see today are not due to natural forces or the passage of time, but rather a massive explosion in 1687. German officer Sobievalski states that a Turkish deserter revealed to Morozina the use to which the Turks had put the Parthenon, expecting that the Venetians would not target a building of such historic importance. Morozini was said to have responded by directing his artillery to aim at the Parthenon. Subsequently, Morozini sought to loot sculptures from the ruin and caused further damage in the process. Or Orin, Wikipedia. Org or Wiki or Francisca Morozini on September 26, 1687, Venetian mortars bombarding Athens scored a direct hit on the edifice. An attache of the Swedish field commander General Otto Wilhelm Nygmark wrote later how it dismayed His Excellency to destroy the beautiful temple which had existed 3,000 years. By contrast, Morozini, who was the commander-in-chief of the operation, described it in his report to the Venetian government as a fortunate shot. When he conquered the Acropolis in early 1688, Morozini attempted to loot Athenas and Poseidon's horses and chariots from the western pediment of the Parthenon, but the sculptures fell on the ground and smashed. 4-5 This was the first documented attempt to remove sculptures from the pediments. 6 The Ottoman Empire regained possession of the monument in the following year and, having noticed the damage, began to sell souvenirs to Westerners. 7 War is hell. The Turks made a stupid mistake, expecting Venetians not to enjoy every moment of destroying Greek culture. I don't understand how anyone believes that the enemy would attack this cultural heritage. It's war. The only objective is to destroy, hurt, and submit. Anything goes, always. So because of some stupid war I don't care about, 3,000 years of history is gone forever. Humans suck. Perhaps structurally intact, but I recall reading that in the time of ancient Greece, it was actually very brightly painted. Has anyone else heard this or can weigh in with more specific authority? Most statues were actually, the fascination with all white marble was more from the Renaissance. It was inspired by the old Roman statues now being all white, but most were not originally that way. The statues and the friezes were. I don't think the columns were. Almost all white statues, monuments, from ancient times were painted. It was used as an ammo dump, a place to store all of your gunpowder where enemy fire is unlikely to be able to hit it and cause it to all go off. Well, it was hit. More than that, it was used as an ammo dump because it was a place of such historical significance. Expecting the Venetians to respect it, instead they fired directly on it and then further damaged it by looting the remains. Full statues of Poseidon and Athena on horseback were shattered as troops attempted to detach them from the walls. Stuff like this makes me wish it was a fox pass to restore these things. They're only ruined because of accidents or happenstance. I think the original builders would prefer them rebuilt than left to rot. Looks like the Parthenon has some work done on it, but it seems kinda lazy. Colossus of Rhodes won't ever be rebuilt because Greece don't have the money, but man would it be cool. They are rebuilding the Parthenon, but it's very slow going. They won't ever build the Colossus of Rhodes because no one knows exactly what it looked like and they are only fairly certain where it might have stood. The Colossus was built and destroyed within one lifetime. I wholeheartedly agree. You can easily just add on to the existing structure and keep the original components intact. In Macedon and Israel they restored some of the buildings, but they put a line in the building of where the original building was and where has been restored. The Colosseum is another good one. Only reason it looks ruined today is because it was used as a convenient quarry for a couple centuries. Imagine seeing a Naumachia, The arena sealed and floated, and full-sized galleys floated on its surface in a mock sea battle. One of the biggest issues with restoration of the Parthenon is that each marble block has only one position where it fits. For example, the floor is actually higher in the center than around the edges. The reason for this was to help eliminate standing water, minimize glare from the sun. While that's all well and good, it's really more of a good side effect. We believe that they designed the floor and other aspects in such a way to trick the mind into thinking the building is perfectly square. Imagine doing a 3D puzzle where every piece only has one spot. Now imagine it taking that 3D puzzle and blowing it up. Now you can imagine the extreme difficulty in restoring something like the Parthenon. Restoration should be done only under consultation with historians and archaeologists in a manner that is consistent in spirit with how the structure was originally built, if the structure was to maintain its historical value. In some places it isn't. There's a famous Douglas Adams quote about him talking with a monk, I think in Japan, about a historic temple, and how the monk didn't understand Douglas' confusion over how it was considered the original historic building while having been rebuilt due to fires several times over in its history. Personally, I think the compromise of traditionally building replicas nearby while preserving the original site for archaeological purposes is the best thing to do. You never know what will turn up later, or what you might lose when you say pave the whole place over like the Victorians did at Knossos in Greece or at Newgrange in Ireland. No kidding. Some of the castles that have been restored in Japan were done so with concrete. They look awful. Finally, many now are being restored using the original building methods, i.e., wood with wooden nails. I recently visited. Slowly, carefully, fragment by fragment, they are working on restoration. The idea of restoring monuments is a very complicated one in Greece. Before restoring any monument, one has to determine what it you are restoring it to, and in doing so you're actively making decisions about what history you choose to represent and what history you choose to paint over. If we restored all the Greek monuments, people would be disgusted at how gaudy they look when full painted because they all expect it to be pure and white stone. If we put the roof back on the Parthenon and restored all the inlaid stories told within the pediments, then the history of Ottoman rule and the subsequent stealing of monuments by the British could be wiped away in just 100 years or so. Even broken monuments have a story to tell, and it can be argued that a broken monument tells a much more accurate and impactful history of events than a restored new monument. The Greek here that loves the Athenian Acropolis. When I was in middle school, I had the chance to visit it with one of the chief archaeologists working on it. Restorations of the Parthenon date back to the 19th century, or Edu or engines or EPA 3078, where shabby materials were used to try to quickly put things back together. In some cases they used metal, which rusted and caused further damage. Today's restorations are partly rebuilding things and partly fixing those bad mistakes. They go into extreme detail, with laser imaging used to create the correct filler pieces for rebuilding and bringing expert sculptors who spend years trying to recreate ancient processes to match what things would have looked like. Specifically, I remember seeing a capital top of a column of such wonderful detail that it made me realize what a challenging project this is, but also that it's worth it. All that said, it's usually somewhat obvious what the new parts of the structure are because the new marble is still very white and some find that ugly. Others like being able to distinguish the original from the new. Either way, a few decades of exposure to the elements will make it all look the same, so not much point debating that one. They were also painted bright colors, so we won't ever see them how their artists intended. They did this with Pompeii and it kind of ruined it for me. I don't want recreations, I want to see whatever is left of the original structure as the Romans built it. Pompeii, is full of rebuilt structures, and it takes away from the experience. I don't know. I feel like if it was restored, people wouldn't see it as a marvel or quite so awe-inspiring. No worries. They built a new one in Nashville. Greece doesn't have enough money to take care of all the ruins. It's sad, but there's so much of it. Do you know what they say of the Acropolis where the Parthenon is? What do they say? What do they say? There are no straight lines. Well, absolutely fuck Morozini. Turkish deserter revealed to Morozini the use to which the Turks had put the Parthenon, expecting that the Venetians would not target a building of such historic importance. Morozini was said to have responded by directing his artillery to aim at the Parthenon. 9620 subsequently, Morozini sought to loot sculptures from the ruin and caused further damage in the process. Sculptures of Poseidon and Athena's horses fell to the ground and smashed as his soldiers tried to detach them from the building's west pediment. 104-122 the following year, the Venetians abandoned Athens. To avoid a confrontation with a large force the Turks had assembled at Chalcis, at that time the Venetians had considered blowing up what remained of the Parthenon along with the rest of the Acropolis to further use as a fortification to the Turks, but that idea was not pursued. 120 the Turks had recaptured the Acropolis. They used some of the rubble produced by this explosion to erect a smaller mosque within the shell of the ruined Parthenon. 123 for the next century and a half, parts of the remaining structure were looted for building material and especially valuable objects. He was Venetian. He was raised with a naturally loathsome disposition towards Greeks. This is why we can't have nice things. Many ruins today were the result of FYI as well. What would cause an explosion like that in 1687? Blowing up an ammo and gunpowder depot. The Ottomans used the site as an ammo or gunpowder storage, assuming the Venetian and others would dare to shoot at it. They had been manufacturing gunpowder in Europe for over 300 years at that point. So, why not just fix it? Restore it to its former glory. I'm sure the people who created it would have wanted that, rather than leave it to wither and crumble over time. Would be way cooler to say we kept a structure maintained for thousands of years, rather than look at its crumbled ruins and go, yep, this is what remains of the Parthenon. Eventually it'll just be dust. There is a fine line between restoration and recreation. In China, they actually follow your advice on rebuilding ancient cities rather than restoring the ruins. And most of the charm is lost in the process. Look at cities like Delhi. They feel more like a theme park than an authentic experience of history. While one may find that favorable, I personally think less is more. Look into Skopje, Macedonia. Most of the city fell down in an earthquake in the 1960s. Yugoslavia rebuilt it with predominantly brutalist concretist-style buildings. Now Macedonia is tearing those down and replacing them with classical-looking buildings in city center. Controversial because, although it's beautiful, the Macedonian economy isn't doing great and there are other things the money could be spent on. Also, some people think it's got a weird vibe to it now. A bit artificial. Venice has done so much damage to the Greek people. It's insane. Not nearly as much as the Turks did. Accident. On purpose. Come on, tell the whole story. It was being used as a warehouse, storing gunpowder for the Ottoman Turkish military who controlled the city. They were at war with the Republic of Venice, and the Venetians shelled it. The powder went boom and several hundred men died. The whole story in 12 minutes helps. Or YouTube. Come or watch. Vnenixvudged trio. God forbid you actually click through and read. Fuck the Venetians. No, The Ottomans put the gunpowder there like idiots. On the one hand, the Venetian Republic was amazing; on the other hand, this and the Fourth Crusade. And on the other view, Elgin's looting 100 years later destroyed some more of the Parthenon as well.